Good morning. It's June 17th at 9:03 a.m. We're here for negotiations between the local fire union and the city of Pocatello. Good morning, gentlemen. Everyone from our side is here, and it appears from your side as well.
Everyone that's going to be here from our side is here. We did have a question about that, though. Is the interim CFO not going to be here today?
Everyone who will be on the table is here.
Okay, because I mean the mayor did say that he was going to attend meetings in the CFO's stead since the CFO has resigned. And so we feel that there's a lot of items that deal with wages, and it's important that someone from the finance department be present so that those items can be taken care of and handled.
Luckily, we've addressed everything from our side that we need to have calculations on before the meeting.
Okay, so if there's any changes, you will have difficulty possibly coming up with them, though, right?
We will not.
All right, fair enough.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to follow up on one of the items that we had ended our discussion on last week, which was the possible executive session. And I'm going to turn the time over to Jerry.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So we talked about possibly having an executive session at this meeting, at this negotiation session. I had some concerns after that discussion about really the interplay between a couple of Idaho codes and how they worked. Quite honestly, they didn't make sense to me to read 74206A and 74206, which is the more specific executive session code. And so I spent the last week and a half or so playing phone tag with the AG's office and was finally able to get in touch with the Deputy Attorney General yesterday. And we had a pretty extensive discussion on that process. He agreed that those two code sections don't match up, they just don't work, and I just wanted to do it right. And so we had that discussion. He had some good advice. Basically, there are ways for us as a union negotiation, two teams to go into executive session, even though 206 says it has to be a governing body with a 2/3 majority vote. I won't get into the real details of it, but basically it is possible. We need to clearly articulate it on the agenda and make it clearly noted in the minutes. Because that conversation wasn't able to happen until yesterday, the notice had already gone out, so I didn't feel like that was appropriate to try to do a last minute change. So if as a result of today's negotiation we still have that issue on the table, I think we could have a discussion about having that on the next negotiation session and doing it the way that the AG's office recommends doing it. They admitted that the law does not make sense between those two provisions, but had some best practice suggestions that I think were good, which is what I said. Notice it and make it clear that you're going into executive session under 74206A, the statute you provided last time, and make that record very clear. So I just wanted to let you know that we talked about possibly doing that the first part of this negotiation session. I was uncomfortable, and based on that conversation just happening yesterday, we're going to have to put that off a little bit. If we don't get it resolved today, we can move forward next time.
Okay, well, our feeling on the proposal, rather than, I mean, clearly you've reached out and done some education as far as looking at the provisions and the codes. Our biggest concern about that proposal was was one that you admitted that you guys kind of had a lot of thought and had a lot of discussion on whether or not that one should be done in open meeting in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And at this table, we're equals, and we should have those conversations as far as whether the appropriateness of that happening in open session happens. You know, there's a lot of items with the person who holds the position that there's a lot of interface between, because they're the only person that's ever held that position. And so where this is such a sensitive matter, we should have in the beginning discussed executive session before we had the proposal on the table, and tried to make a determination as to whether we were talking about the individual or talking about the position.
Well, and I understand where you're coming from. I actually discussed with the AG's office, the person I visited with, about that question, really, about position versus person, whether we're talking about performance issues, whether we're talking about, you know, structural or organizational issues. And he agreed that there's not a need for that executive session under that provision if you're just talking about the position. But he also understood that there's only one person, like you said, that holds that position. So it's a really fine line between position and person and executive session versus open negotiations. And so all I can tell you is that we made that determination. I guess I would respectfully disagree that determination, it's our proposal. We don't have to run that by you beforehand, but we're happy to have, if we don't resolve that particular issue, we're happy to have an executive session. Like I said, go into it and discuss what we feel is appropriate for an executive session, and if it starts to go outside of that, and we both are done with what we have to say, we can pop out of executive session and go back on an open record. So that's how I see it going forward.
Well, and I guess, just, give me a second. So, when the city formed the fleet department,
The what?
when the city formed the fleet department,
Okay.
did they, I mean, were there layoffs? Did they go in and, regardless of someone's personnel file and personal record and certifications and history with the city, did they go in and remove those positions?
Honestly, I don't have the answer.
Or were
I
they
think
all
there was-
absorbed within the fleet?
We ruled employees from the city into another department. Unfortunately, the EVT and fire is controlled by the CBA, which means it can't be a role. It has to be removed from the CBA, which is why we brought it as part of the bargaining unit to the table.
I don't understand. I mean, I understand that certainly he's within the CBA, but I don't understand the logic behind you have to remove the position.
Because
You
the
have to
bargaining
remove the
unit
person.
currently has the right to negotiate on behalf of that position. If I can't move it, the union has to let me take it out of the CBA. I can't roll it over. That's
Okay.
it. You guys control your bargaining unit that are listed. It is a listed position. I have no way of removing that without it being a bargaining unit item.
He is a city employee, though.
But he is controlled by the CBA. That's the difference.
Okay. Well, I guess with that out of the way, we're not going to executive session. Where do you want to go from here?
We were hoping to follow up. At the end of the last meeting, you mentioned there was a previous combat challenge proposal that you were more interested in. I wondered if you had a chance to look at that.
To be honest, I didn't have a lot of discussion about that, or I believe it was your counter that said that, that we would leave the combat challenge in place. I mean, I think the only sticking point that we had between the two sides was leaving the language of the combat challenge in the proposal.
So you're talking about the original
It
calendar?
may have been the original proposal. Do you have a copy of the original proposal? Because I'm not positive I do.
Well, we have copies of the very, very many proposals we've crossed back and forth.
Let's see if I can find it. And that was all we were wondering is, because there was a lot of back and forth on that one, I believe. We weren't sure which counter proposal you were referring to.
If you'll give us a second later on to, when we take a break, we'd like to look through our paperwork and make sure that we've got that paper. And then we'll maybe revisit that. But I guess at this point, we would like to move forward and try to address some other proposals that are on the table. And I'm certainly glad to circle back around and have more discussion about the combat challenge one.
It looks like our original proposal was management proposal 15 on May 14th, Andrea.
Okay.
That was the original proposal from the city side. If there's a counter after that, I can get that detail to you. There were multiples.
There were
I was
multiples.
Trying to figure out which one.
Yes.
Was it the one where we had conversation about just the combat challenge reverting back to? It's just hard to know which one to pull so we can review it as well. We can circle back on it.
Yeah, let's circle back on it. We'd like to have a little discussion.
I understand.
Caucus.
The city does have a multi-part proposal we'd like to put on the table if now's a good time.
Sure. What is it pertaining to?
Well, I will show you.
Okay.
So I did a PowerPoint, so we can talk about each point. So here's our we've given up counters and multi-parts. This is just a city proposal, so for Andrea's sanity. I just stated it as of today. So this is a multi-part proposal that must be taken in its entirety. The city here is offering it as a package, and we will not TA any singular part of the offer.
I mean, let's just see what it is.
Just to be clear though, it is it's a group, it's a grouping. So we are offering a 3-year collective bargaining agreement, so 22 through 24. We would agree to the 4896 with some conditions. The criteria for the 4896 will be defined cooperatively between the two parties. The schedule will be defined in a policy document which will be incorporated by reference into the CBA as an MOU. The policy document discussion will begin no sooner than October 1st, 2021. It'll be noticed and discussed in open meeting in city council chambers. The discussion is to create an MOU and will not be subject to the requirements of Idaho Code 44-1801. Continuing. Implementation of the 4896 will occur within 30 days of the adopted MOU. If the parties fail to reach agreement on the policy document, it will be generated by the city and the MOU will be presented to each party for ratification by August 31st, 2022. If the union fails to ratify the MOU, the 4896 schedule cannot be adopted and the schedule used in fiscal year 21 will remain in effect. Employees on the 4896 schedule will have a 24-day FLSA cycle. The raises for the 3 years would be applied to base. 22 would be 2%, 23 would be 2.5%, and 24 would be 3%. Longevity would continue, however, the longevity calculation would stay as of the fiscal year 21 rates. New participants in the plan would be eligible to roll on, and employees would continue to move up the eligibility scale until max. The EVT position will remain as is until the current employee vacates, and once that employee leaves the position, it would then be removed from the CBA. Medical insurance, the city and the union would split the premiums at a 95-5 for an employee only, a 90-10 for employee plus one, and an 85-15 for two or more. And all other open items on the table would be withdrawn by the offering parties. I have a handout of that for you. Understandably, we just threw a lot of data at you. If there's no questions you have immediately, we understand a caucus would probably be appropriate right now.
Yeah, I think we better caucus.
Thank you.
I was just trying to read through it and see if there were any questions that I was going to ask for clarification before we went. Let's caucus and then we'll come back in.
The Paradise Conference Room remains yours. Still good morning, welcome back.
Good morning. So we have a counter to your multi-part proposal.
Okay.
I'll have Adam bring them over. And just like your proposal, this is conceptual in nature, obviously. if we do come to agreement, then we've got to work on the actual contract language and make sure that it fits the intent. I want to start by pointing out that this is, that there's a fair amount of concession in this from our side. There's a moving from a 9-day FLSA cycle to a 24-day FLSA cycle is a big deal for us. We proposed that we accepted Part A, or Part 1, that we move to the 4896 October 1 or as close to that as would work within FLSA guidelines. Part 3, we increased the number of, or the numbers for the raises. We went 2.5, 3, and 3.5 for the 3 years of the contract.
Okay.
We agreed to Part 4, freezing Schedule B, and new participants are still eligible and employees will continue to move up. Part 5 we accepted, which also is a concession. I mean, we feel like that does a good job of protecting our current employee, but we do have concerns about maintenance going forward. On Part 6, we went with the numbers that historically had been in the contract, but also included the $1,000 of VIVA that we gave up when we left the city's health insurance. And we just wanted to point out that with these raises and that VIVA increase, this basically keeps our paychecks flat for at least the first year. And we've done nothing to address the fact that the fire department is significantly behind their comparables and make any ground up. So that's our proposal.
So on your Part 2, that's, you agree to it with the 24-day cycle?
Yep, we agreed to it with the 24-day cycle. We moved to it at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we get rid of all of the other stipulation about everything. We will get it worked out. As a local and as a fire union, we've been ready to move to the 4896 for a while, and we feel like we've got all the details we need worked out on that. I mean, and to clarify, that was removing all the criteria that was spelled out in your proposal.
So 2A, 1 through 5.
What's that?
Our proposal, you're eliminating all those conditions.
Yes.
Okay. I guess I have a question. The on or near, you're saying on or near October 1 only based on the FLSA cycle, not based on any workings of the fine details of implementation. Is that what you're?
You know, we said based on the FLSA cycle, but I think we're willing to talk about the fine details of implementation. The point is that we want to just make sure that it happens.
I understand. I just want to understand. So yeah, I'm not questioning that. I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying here.
Yeah. I mean, do you have questions about the fine details of implementation?
Well, yeah, that's what conditions 1 through 5 are in 2A, is working out those fine details.
We felt like that just left a little too much wiggle room, and it was just, we feel like we've got the majority of that worked out, and we should be able to figure out any of the fine details with our staff.
Okay.
All right, we need to caucus.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back again. Thank you for letting us take a brief break. We have a counter to your counter, as expected. And I don't have this memorized, so I can't start talking on my way back. I can tell you that the changes to our original proposal are highlighted in yellow, and we did include language on the combat challenge. Because we just really want to come to an agreement on that one, because I know both sides have put a lot of work into a physical agility test. So 1 remained the same. 2, we changed the discussion for a policy document to July 1st with implementation no later than April. The MOUs would be presented April 1st. We agreed to your percentages on number 3 of 2.5, 3, and 3.5. We countered on your 6, we added a B. You would be eligible for the $700 wellness exam incentive that employees get under the medical program. During your annual exam, whether that's your physical through work or through your personal medical provider, you would submit a form just saying you went. That'd be paid in a lump sum. And then number 7 is an entirely new section on the physical agility test.
So I guess a couple of items. On the 4896, the reason that we had changed and just said we will implement it on October 1st is that we have concerns about the promise to maybe do it. And we have difficulty with the fact that it's not concrete. And we, what's that? Okay, you want to do a caucus now? All right.
All right.
I guess we're gonna call caucus.
Well, can I just add one thing before you caucus, is the discussion that we had amongst ourselves and with fire management was, we agree that it sounds like you're pretty close to having that pinned down. We just need to have some assurances that it is pinned down before implementation. And by moving up these dates, we're optimistic that implementation still can occur much quicker, but we have to have some parameters for that. So I just want you to know we're seeing the same thing, but this just kind of encapsulates the need to make sure that happens before implementation. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say. So go ahead and caucus and we'll go. Okay.
All right, Andrea, what was our stand on that one? Welcome back again. Still morning. We're doing great.
Okay. So just in going over everything, we feel like as if we are, like both sides are reasonably close.
Okay.
There are a couple items that we wanted to address. We feel like bringing Article 7 into this, where we had made this proposal all-inclusive, is regressive bargaining. That's trying to bring something in to dilute the proposal. And so we feel like Article 7 should be, or not Article 7, but Item 7 should be struck for that reason. We can negotiate it in a couple of years, or we can even work on an MOU in the interim. But we feel like number 7 should be removed from this.
Okay. We put it in there because we talked about it right before this comprehensive offer. It was on the table today. We're really just working towards final agreement, but we can discuss pulling it out and doing an MOU. I don't think it's regressive bargaining. I think it's just trying to negotiate in good faith. I think it's the opposite of what you claim it is, but that's fine. We can talk about that, but we'd like to hear what other concerns or questions, what you have with the most recent counteroffer.
Well, and the multi-part deal was all-inclusive, and so that was the only reason that we were bringing that up. Anyway, we feel like that one should be removed. The other items that we have on it, as far as the proposal that you've got, and what we'll do is we'll make this just a verbal proposal.
Okay.
With going with the 95, 90, and 85 percentages, we'll have membership that will lose money in year 1 and barely make it to even in year 2 of this contract. So what we would do to offset that would be accept the percentages, accept the $700, but for item 3 on salary, we would say 5% for year 1 for FY22, just to help those members offset that so that they at least remain flat. And
So from 2.5 to 5, is that what you're saying?
yes, 2.5 to 5.
And I think it's important to know, we have members that under this employee share will lose 6 to 8% of their wage. And so at the end of FY22, they'll be significantly worse than they were at the beginning. And
so that's what that change would be for. And then secondly, on item 2 regarding the 4896, we have concerns that in the discussions and in the agreement that we may end up having one side basically put contingencies on the agreement that make it so it's impossible for us to pass as a union body. We feel like with our original proposal for the 4896, it has a lot of hallmarks and a lot of benchmarks in it. And so we would like number 2 on this to be replaced by our original 4896 proposal.
Do you know what proposal number that was, or what the date was on that?
Let me go into the first ones, day 2.
It was union proposal 3.
It was 4.
Was it 4? All right. This list is incorrect then. But yeah, it was.
Your original proposal was a 1-year trial period. We're not offering a trial period. We're offering adoption of the 4896 as soon as the policy document is created. Are you maintaining the 1-year trial period?
I think we would go with our original proposal. I mean, if you guys would want to remove the 1-year trial period, I think
Well, I'm
we
just
might be
making
agreeable to
sure
that.
that that is your intent with this offer.
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, we are out of time for today. Before we close up, I think it would be a good point at this time to reach out to Federal Mediation Service. With your permission, we'll go ahead and we'll send that email out and copy you.
Okay.
If you don't mind, can I ask a question on that, on your proposal versus ours? So your proposal suggests that we create an MOU, and our proposal basically just says that, we'll go to 4896 along with the implementation manual that we've already created. And so our concern is that we're starting an MOU in the term of negotiating a contract, and it just seems like since we're here with the session open, why not hash out these details in open session? We don't understand why we have to create another MOU for this issue. So we're just kind of confused on it.
I feel like it's bigger than just an implementation policy. I feel that it would be the operating guidelines for the new schedule, which is very new to the city. While it's familiar within your service, it is very new to the city. Jared and I worked very carefully on how we would phrase that. Is it a policy? Is it an SOG? Is it an MOU? And I defer to Jared on the MOU expertise.
Well, it really is an MOU that would be, that would adopt that policy by reference into the CBA, so that it's something that everybody knows what's going to happen. It's not an implementation process. It's a guiding document for the schedule that you're looking for. And an SOG is always subject to change. It doesn't get presented to council. It just is much more flexible. Whereas an MOU that references the policy into the CBA, sorry, the CBA references the policy.
Hello? Hello?
We are almost
Hi,
finished.
Kristen? Hi, Kristen?
I can't hear you.
Oh, okay, then I won't talk to him.
Just keep going.
So so that's why we look at doing an MOU that references the policy. It just makes it more hard and fast and more, and makes it less flexible for both sides to know exactly what it is that's being implemented. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And I guess our concern, is that a lot of these other issues in this proposal are tied to the 4896. And if it became so constrictive that we wouldn't be able to go to the 4896, but we had agreed to all of these other conditions, then we feel like, that's not, we won't have to guarantee that it's going to work.
No, I understand what you're saying. Understand that, like Heather said, in discussing the language that we put in part 2 of this proposal, it was on the basis of what you said, of what the chief has told us in consultation with him, that you are really close to having that pinned down. And so we're taking that for its word. We don't know. We're not part of those conversations. But what we're being told by both sides is that, yeah, you're really close to an implementation and a policy for having this structure, that it shouldn't be a big deal if you're really that close. I don't think it's anybody's intention to ambush or kibosh the whole thing by throwing out some condition that is just unachievable by both sides. If we weren't in that position, if we weren't hearing from both sides that you're really close to having an agreement on that, then I would understand your concern more. So yeah, it's probably a little bit of faith on your part that you're at the position that you feel you are, and that management isn't going to backtrack on that. So I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, it wouldn't be good advice from me and from Heather to impose a policy or a massive shift change to 4896 without some parameters. Knowing that both sides are really close on those parameters is the only reason why we feel this is a possible route going forward and getting it implemented sooner rather than later.
Hello?
So Jared, I think our issue really then is with part 5.
Okay?
Basically says that if we can't get this thing ratified, that's our issue with it. And I think if we're that close, if both sides really think we're that close,
Yeah.
if we just struck 5,
But what do we do if we can't reach agreement, Curtis? I agree, we are this close and we understand and we've read all the literature you provided. But at the end of the day, this is a big decision for both sides. What happens if we don't hit an agreement? We have to go somewhere.
That was
I agree
really,
with that, but I think if we're truly
Hello?
on both sides and working towards it,
Sorry.
Somebody say hi.
Well, can we agree to the policy before we agree to this whole stuff? So it's not an open-ended.
But this is a lot bigger than an SOG, and it's a lot bigger than an implementation guide. We're looking for a controlling policy document.
so,
but
and
without seeing the policy document, we're kind of going into this blind saying, we'll agree to work on it without seeing it.
We don't have one either. That's why it would be a cooperative group that would start as of no sooner than July 1st. That could very easily be settled within a couple of meetings, because I know there's been discussion between the union and management.
Right.
We feel we're very close. We trust both sides when you say that. But at the end of the day, if we don't have agreement, what do we run? There's ambiguity onto what schedule will be run in the fire service.
part 5 was really, I thought, as I looked at it and we discussed it, part 5 to me seemed like a safeguard for you. That if something doesn't happen, you still get 4896, and then it'll be city adopted policies that guide it, but you'll still get it one way or another.
That's not
That's
the
not
way
what
it's
you're
That's not the way it's written. That says we'll use our current
Yeah, we'd be
schedule.
happy with that.
Well,
If you change
don't-
that to.
Well, you have to ratify. We would provide the policy document, but it does have to be ratified by
Right.
both sides.
Right, but if it's not ratified, let's say we can't get the council to ratify it, and they're say we have a road council, and we can't get anything ratified, and you can't get it ratified on your side, then we're stuck with working the current schedule, even though we maybe have agreed to it. And so I think if we just took 5 out of there, then both sides know we have to reach an agreement. Because the problem is, it's not just our side. If the council doesn't ratify it, then we're in the same boat, and we're stuck with the schedule that we're currently on.
Give us just, can we have just a second?
Sure.
We'll do a little sidebar.
Mini officer.
Hello?
Hello?
All right, we'll make a verbal adjustment that I'm going to hand right in. Sorry, dude, you're gonna have to wait 5 more minutes. All right, so we would agree to remove number 7, which was the physical agility test. We would agree to strike number 2, item 5, the MOU failure to ratify. However, the percentages as written on the sheet would remain as is.
In part 3.
Or part 3, number 3.
Do we have to end, or are we able to continue?
If we can wrap this up in the next 5 minutes, I will take the beating from the people in the lobby.
Can we just do a small sidebar then?
Yep. Andrea, will you let me know we'll be 5 minutes?
Send me out here.
Hello?
Wonder if I should get on, I'm still probably.
John's out there.
Turn that speaker is loud.
I'm gonna go. I'm sorry, it's really hard to have a conversation.
I like the hellos.
I'm just glad it wasn't just me hearing voices.
For once.
Does nobody ever,
For once?
does nobody else hear that? Yeah, I know.
Just in our brief discussion, obviously with the insurance, this is a huge change, and we need to make sure of where we're able to sit with our body and decide whether or not we're going to be able to get this ratified. So we feel like it would be better to discuss in another meeting.
Okay.
And so we probably should end for the day, and then
I'll reach out to you with possible dates.
I do believe we're close.
Yeah.
We're concluded for the day.
Thanks, guys.